We have Raj, who's the CEO and founder of Zaggle. And Raj, to share with you, today's audience is really a bunch of aspiring, in flight, and mature founders, also SMEs, entrepreneurs across industry segments, including Thai members who are both charter members and associate members. So I'm really looking forward to this session with you, Raj. So let me take a couple of minutes to introduce Raj before we sort of launch into this wonderful interaction. I'll be reading from his profile. Raj is a eminent entrepreneur, also a startup investor, very seasoned investor. So Raj has over 25 years of experience both across India and global, US essentially, a serial entrepreneur who has built and grown businesses, sold businesses across fintech, prepaid internet, retail, loyalty, you name it, bunch of segments. He's currently the founder and chairman of Zaggle. I'm sure all of you are familiar with Zaggle, a wonderful success story, an award-winning fintech company which helps companies digitize spends and automatic processes relating to payments. The company, interestingly, among the rare startups which has gone for a listing. So the company has now been listed on NSE and BSE, both the premier stock exchanges in India. The public issue was very successful. In fact, the latest quarter revenues is 200 crore plus. So Zaggle is trending towards 1,000 crore revenue already, and its market cap is close to 4,000 crores. So I'm really happy to share about the quick sort of vital statistics of what Zaggle has been doing. Just to continue about Raj, he's also interestingly a very active angel investor and mentor who has spent a huge amount of time and his bandwidth in nurturing, mentoring startups across the segment. A lot of his interest is towards consumer internet, which is D2C, fintech, and B2B enterprise focused startups. Raj is involved very actively in the ecosystem. He has won several awards across the ecosystem, his latest being named as the top 50 digital fintech influencer in India. In 2023, he was felicitated by the state of Telangana, the T Hub, as an entrepreneur par excellence. So, several sort of celebrations of his entrepreneurial journey. A quick background, he comes from a background in economics from Delhi University, and he's actually spent some time pursuing his MBA at NYU Stern School of Management. He was also part of the PwC US's MCS practice. Lastly, his personal interests, angel investor, startup mentor, cricket. Cricket plays a big role, including in Zaggle's very early sponsorship of some of the top-notch cricketers like Hardik Pandya and Bumrah. He's a golfer, badminton very actively, and interestingly, he grows organic vegetables and works very closely with the startup ecosystem. So, with that introduction, I would really like to invite Raj to share with all of us today from his rich, breadth and depth of experience. So, Raj, I would love to sort of have our audience today hear about the Zaggle story, right? It is a unique role model for India and global startups. So, would you be open to share with us a little bit of your personal timeline, how Zaggle was born, and the amazing progress you have made over the last 10, 12 years of Zaggle's journey to the current IPO and the post listing performance, Raj? Over to you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you so much for such a warm introduction. I also would like to thank IDFC First Bank, Money Control, and CNBC TV 18 and Thai Hyderabad, for giving me this opportunity. Zaggle started with a simple premise that it is an antidote to haggle. So we always said, Indians have that habit of haggling, So we said, we need to do something where they would not have to haggle, and it would be just Zaggle. So that's why our, tagline says, "Don't haggle, just Zaggle." That is how Zaggle came in. Basically, if you look at 2012, this is before the digital world or the digital payments world started. And we have been toying with the idea of creating a digital infrastructure on which the payments could seamlessly happen. And this was also coming out of a need, when we were talking to multiple corporates, and we were doing basically into B2B business. What we realized is that a lot of corporates, and this is in the reward space, so a lot of corporates wanted to go ahead and give the power of choice in the employees or the consumer's hand. Okay, typically before that, it used to be that very large companies will buy maybe 200, 2000, 20,000, like those pieces, and will distribute it across either distributors or employees. Okay, and there were like breakages, there were like a lot of other issues, problems which they were facing. So and whenever we will meet them, they will say, no, 100 pieces broke, 200 pieces broke, and it was becoming a very big challenge. And what we decided is that why don't we come out with a digital card. Okay, a digital card where the power of choice is given to the consumer or the employee, and they can go to this specific retail outlets and purchase whatever they wanted to. So that is how the Zaggle journey started. The first year GMV was about 4 crores, and today we are in tens of thousands of crores.
No, very, very fascinating, Raj. And I take away from there, I think the opposite of haggle is a very interesting twist to the name. I always thought, why Zaggle? So you shared that. But finding that good problem, right? The whole B2B ecosystem, finding the good problem. And I recently noted, Raj, in fact, today I think you have been included in a premier sort of index of SME fintech companies. So congratulations to you and the Zaggle team.
Thank you
And
so
I
much.
also noted, Raj, that you are now diversifying into fleet management also, and you have Torrent Gas as one of your customers. So, just wanted to understand for some of our founders here who look at B2B versus B2C and the different dynamics, right? So, B2B typically the sales cycles can be very long.
Yeah.
So, you know, how have you built up such a blue chip sort of client portfolio, Raj? I think it's very enviable. Can you give us some insights into, firstly, why you chose a B2B problem versus a B2C, and then how you built that sort of team and the whole SOP to crack the blue chip market in B2B, Raj? Over to you.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sanjay. So, if you really look at it, every business, if you see, has a creator, a operator, and an executor. Okay, so the creator is the visionary, the guy who would envision that, what does he want to build. And then he would have like, his, operators who would basically be the CFO, CEO, CMO, so and so forth, CTO, etc. And then there would be execution, which are the teams below these operators. Okay, so what is happening is, how is the flow of communication happening between, the visionary to the executor, and from the executor back to the visionary. Okay, so this was a little bit of a challenge for us. And when we started, see, the beauty of B2C is that it is very glamorous, it is very lucrative, and people immediately look at you and think that, oh yeah, I have heard this name, I have heard that name. For us, unfortunately, what we decided, the creator decided that we would want to stick to something called B2B. We will focus only on B2B, and will go deep into B2B. So the idea was, do we want to be mile wide and inch deep, or do we want to be inch wide and mile deep? So we chose a combination of in between, and that is how we realized that if we go and build a B2C business, and rewards can be B2C, rewards can be B2B, but we really realized that it would not help us fight against people who are like funded extravagantly. I would say, they are overfunded, and that overfunding sometimes kills the companies, is, what we are seeing today. So what we did is that we said, okay, B2B, it is tough, but, once you have built the moat in B2B, the entry barrier, which is typically, is that, it is very difficult to replace you, once you have, got into a B2B space. So that is what we did. We realized that if we concentrate on the, enterprise space, that is what is going to help us. And, believe me, in fact, today, Zaggle hasn't raised any money except for, some crores which we raised, 1 year before the IPO. So it is like basically a bootstrapped company, always tight on funds. And from bootstrap to an IPO is how our story is. And what has helped us is that below the radar have not gone ahead and, gone for glamour, have kept, stealthily, build the business, not attracted too much of, attention. And the whole idea was that, as in golf, they say hole in one. Is there a way that, we can directly do a hole in one and, get to an IPO? So, but to be very candid, sometimes it gives me goosebumps when I look at my own story, and I wonder, how I have been able to pull it off. Of course, the team has been, super supporting, and that is how, the focus, the concentration, the ability to not get diverted by, the glamorous raises, which some of our, friends and, fellow fintech players did. So that has helped us a lot.
No, that's fascinating, Raj, and my compliments to you and the Zaggle team for actually scaling in a highly regulated fintech ecosystem. I'm sure you also have a lot of emphasis on ensuring that you are sort of working within the guardrails.
Yeah.
So I'll sort of ask you a question which could help a lot of my entrepreneur colleagues in Thai, right? Both
Uh-huh.
early sort of entrepreneurs, as well as there are now several friends who are close to the 20, 30, 40 million dollar sort of revenue mark.
Yeah.
In your cycle journey, Raj, how did
Mhm.
you identify the right leadership to bring on board?
Mhm.
Like you use the term, the visionary, the creator, and the executor, right? So I find that a lot of SMEs and entrepreneur friends, at some point, once they reach a certain size, when they have to take the leap to taking on senior professionals, senior CXOs, they sometimes face this challenge of the question between the market is so expensive. Why should I pay somebody quarter million, $500,000 and get that person? What if I make a wrong choice? And how will that person create enough value to justify their cost? So I'm sure you have dealt with this in your journey, Raj. Can you give us some insights on that? Yeah.
Thank you. It is a beautiful question. And, I'll tell you, entrepreneurship is priceless. Please value it. That is the first very, very important thing. All entrepreneurs, if you really look at it, are impatient in their actions. Okay. They really want to get things done, as of yesterday, then today. Okay. That is how, entrepreneurship is. But, they are not patient in results. Everybody wants results very, very quickly. हमने बोल दिया should be done now. Why is it? And every entrepreneur, generally thinks that, they have the ability to do everything, whether it is right from sweeping the floor, to making a drone. They first come with that capability. First, they come with that understanding that they have the capability to do it. Okay. And there is where a lot of entrepreneurship journeys go wrong, because you have to really understand that it is very, very important for you to have a team. Team is a single sutra for success. And if you don't have a team, just on your lone basis, you're trying to conquer the world, even Alexander failed. Okay. So that is the story, which I would say that hire the right team at the right time. Timing is very difficult. Okay. So when timing is difficult, then how do you hire them? You feel that the need is not there, but I might need the guy maybe 6 months, 8 months, 12 months down the line. Okay. You should really go ahead and hire them now. When you go out for the talent when you need it, you will never get talent. It is the question of, you raise more money when you don't need money. Okay,
Correct.
similarly you go and get talent when you really don't need talent, because they also, when they come in, would require some time, okay, some time to adjust to your culture, okay, or your company's culture. And then the chemistry, etc., all of that takes time. So hiring is extremely important, and it is religious, for any founder to go and spend time on hiring. If they don't spend time on hiring, they can't run the business. Second, it is not a single individual, okay, it is the team which works. Like in cricket you have 11 players, here also you have about 7 8, CXOs who would be required to run it. They may not be exactly a CXO in the earlier part of the journey, but they are guys who definitely would grow into that role. So you have to
Yeah.
keep that in mind, and hunt for the talent, when hunters are sleeping.
No, extraordinary insights, Raj. Really, I think you're speaking from your personal journey, and it's so valuable. Actually, on that point, just to take one last facet of that, Raj, you touched upon this so well that there is always a build versus buy. So there is an
Mhm.
element of build where you are identifying early good talent, you are nurturing them, and they
Mhm.
grow into that CXO position.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
one last dimension there, Raj. For an entrepreneur
Mhm.
to give that sort of autonomy and control to a professional or a stakeholder in their startup or business, right?
Mhm.
It requires a element of confidence, trust, and a readiness to nurture that next level leader and give them control. Because I always sort of joke with my entrepreneur friends that if
Uh-huh.
you continue to do backseat driving, you will only have order takers, so it's not going to help. So any thoughts on that element of providing them that trust and autonomy and not coming in their way as they begin to have the team report into them and take those decisions? How do you make senior leadership successful, Raj? Yeah.
Absolutely. So one of the things which an entrepreneur should do is to make very ordinary folks look like extraordinary. Okay. That is the main role, which an entrepreneur has to do. And I would take, little bit of, uh, I'll borrow a little bit of wisdom from the game hockey. In
Right.
hockey, what you do is you dribble, okay, and after dribbling, you have to pass. You have to make your team look like hero and not you yourself. Okay, so that is where you have to come in. The creator has, he has a larger vision than everybody else. So he has the ability to see what the others are not seeing, right? And that is why it is very, very essential for him or her, to come, do the dribble. Okay, whenever they are stuck in situations, come in, give the, the extra hand what they need, and solve that problem, and then let them, go ahead and do the goal. Okay, so that is a very critical part, of the overall journey. And if you make them look good, automatically the company is looking good.
Very, very well said, Raj. Really, amazing. So let me now, the title of our sort of discussion today, the brave new world, right? Scaling
Uh-huh.
in the brave new world. So I just wanted to get the benefit for our audience today from some of what you are seeing, Raj. In many ways, why brave new world? I guess post COVID, the whole interest rates going to zero, and the governments all over the world who pumped in, I don't know, 50, 60 trillion dollars of liquidity, which
Uh-huh.
actually led to a lot of that money hunting for high risk investments. And it
Yep.
led to a possible sort of, I would say, excess in terms of availability of capital, where good, projects, not so good projects, and terrible, ventures were also liberally funded, where startups sort of, got spoiled by expecting to always get next capital round after round. So we have seen ventures which have raised even 2 300 $400 million absolutely go bust at some point because their models, their foundation was not built in a resilient long-term manner, Raj. So post the whole sort of pullback by the government of liquidity, the interest rate increase, I think a lot of startups, including in India, the early stage startups, have suddenly sort of been left high and dry because the expectations of investors in terms of at what point an angel would invest, at what point a early VC and a late VC would invest, the goalposts, moved substantially. So
Yeah.
from a brave new world, Raj, what would be those, three or four suggestions you would give to both in-flight startups who are caught a little bit in this movement of goalpost, as well as aspiring startups who are now, like a lot of young graduates in the US and India, caught unfortunately the timing where the employment markets for young graduates has sort of softened dramatically. So
Yep.
thoughts on that, Raj? Over to you. Yeah,
Sure,
thank you.
sure. Thank you, thank you. It had multiple questions, so I'll answer, one
Sure.
by one, Sanjay. See,
Yeah.
one thing for entrepreneurs today is to look at that, mental capacity is more than, the financial capacity. Sorry.
Interesting.
Yeah. So what they will have to necessarily look at is that their ability to focus on building something which is value accretive rather than valuation. The valuation, we chase valuation, and which is, one second, we chase valuation, and valuation is, always a little bit of a issue, because it goes through crests and trough. And what happens is, either there is too much of capital chasing these companies, or there is no capital, or too many companies chasing the capital. Okay, so either of those two scenarios gets played. And what we have to really look at is, if you build value, valuation will follow. If you build valuation, no value will follow. Okay, so that's a speed which we have to very clearly understand, that with valuation you won't be able to really build value. That's a biggest problem. Too much money will be spoiled, spent, and too less value will be created. See, the other thing which you have to constantly look at is, how much money do you have, what kind of runway do you have. Okay, so what has been set up in our country has been a series of bad examples. Okay, and the series of bad examples are where too much money has gone into some of the most celebrated startups with very little value getting created. And what has happened is that, good capital has followed bad capital. Okay, and when you have good capital following bad capital, somebody has to suffer. And who has to suffer? The suffering is for those entrepreneurs who have really built value. Okay, and this was very clear to me when, I was trying to fundraise in 2017-18. I was told, why don't you go after the SME market? Go ahead, SME market, leave the, enterprise market. So I said, what will an SME in India pay me? US I can still understand, but India, there would be hardly any money which would, I would be able to make. They said, no, 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 we'll be willing to fund you if you go the SME route. And what has happened, 4 years later, when 3 years later, when COVID hit, the SMEs collapsed. Okay. And then the same guys who were telling me, to go after the SME market said, go after the enterprise market. So, I stood my ground and I said, I am going to only be in enterprise market. I am not going to look after the SME. And SME, if they come, we will, onboard them. Otherwise, we are happy doing enterprise market. What we did, if you really look at, the other thing is, how do you pivot, and how do you pivot at the right time? And question is, there is no right time to pivot, but you have to pivot at the right time. So that is the kind of a, quandary which you get into. Okay. And what happened for us was that, we were into the transactions business. Typically, thousands of crores of, cards we would distribute among, corporates and their employees. And they would go ahead and, use these cards at any, these large merchants. And what was happening is, we had very little mechanism, to go ahead and give reports to the corporate. So that is when, we pivoted, saying that why don't we build a model which is, which at that time wasn't so much so as SaaS, but it was something, in lines of SaaS. and that we built for, 2, 3, 4 corporates. And eventually, if you look at it today, we have about 35 crores of our income coming just from SaaS. So the pivot to SaaS, which we said software, along with financial transaction, together, gives a 360-degree view for any corporate or enterprise to look at where they are spending, how they are spending, when they are spending, and what they are spending on.
Right, right, right. No, again, very, very valuable, Raj. I think you sort of, brought out that very important aspect so well, that one, a startup's journey is not a short-term journey. It's
Yeah, yeah,
probably
yeah,
unrealistic to think that
absolutely.
I can bring an idea, get funded in year one, year two, get more funding, and in 4 5 years I can exit. Number one.
Correct.
Number
Yep.
two, your first problem which you have taken up to solve may not be the eventual business which you will actually scale into.
Yep.
I think so interesting. So, like you said, I really love that term, mental capacity versus financial capacity, Raj. So, you know, how do startup founders, build that sort of mental capacity? Because financial capacity, I guess, friends, family, immediate known circles, they can probably plan for. And I like to share this with all my startup founders, that you
Mhm.
need at least a couple of crores of initial capital before you even think of going to an outside investor. But that
Correct.
mental capacity. So, do you feel, Raj, that sometimes startup founders, aspiring founders, can benefit from actually working closely with startups in whatever capacity, learning the ropes of a particular industry or business, which means they actually defer the entrepreneurship journey by 4 5 6 years and then launch? See, this is a question I often get. In fact, when I've spoken at MBA schools, when I say something like this, the youngsters are always reminding me that, the top notch, whether it's Apple or Microsoft, or in fact, there's Peter Thiel, who actually rewards people to drop out of college and start off. So, what
Yeah.
is what is your inclination, Raj? Early startup founder who just comes out of college, MBA, etc., or a founder with 5 6 8 10 years experience? What would be your preference? Back to you. Yeah,
So yeah, yeah. So you already would know my view, but I'll just give one line, before
please,
I jump onto this question. See,
please.
slow success builds
Right.
character. Okay, slow success builds character, and
Wow.
fast success builds ego. Okay, what happens is, when you are really getting success much faster, it goes to your head. You have seen cricketers, who have had like a outstanding one series, and after that you go, next 10 series they are out. Eventually they are out of the Indian team. Okay, versus you look at, players, who did 40s, 50s, 60s, contributed in every manner, but never allowed the success to go to their head. That is why they say temperament is so important. And why is temperament so important? Sometimes, more than technique, the temperament helps. Okay, especially I'm taking the analogy from cricket. And why it does is because the pressure, a lot of people are not able to take the pressure. That's why I say mental capacity is very important for entrepreneurs than financial capacity. Second thing, on your point, see, once you have like 5 6 10 years experience, what happens? Okay, so let's compare both of these. So if you're
Yeah.
young, you have a lot of energy, no baggage, ability to do, nothing to lose. You think, okay, whatever it is, sometimes, it is a new idea which I am doing, nobody else has got experience before. You can do all of that, yet you fail. It is that, okay, he was young, that's why he failed. But you have, like, let's say, compare that with 5 6 years, 7 years, 10 years experienced guy comes in. He would be deliberate. Okay, he would want to fend off few balls before he starts hitting, runs. Okay, so he will take his own time, but he would have a better view. Okay, so both are, in their own sense, depending on what business it is, both of them are good. But ideally, if you ask me for my preference, I would always prefer entrepreneurs who have spent 6 7 years in either doing a job or in business before they come out and start their own venture.
No, fantastic, Raj. And I love your sports analogies, both with hockey, the dribbling part, as well as cricket. So obviously, you are a big, sports fan. And I know that, like I mentioned, I saw in your Zaggle's sort of journey that you were early sponsors of some of the top cricketers today. So great to
Yeah,
know that. Great to know
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Let me let me try and delve into a little bit of your personal sort of founder's journey, Raj.
Uh-huh.
I'm curious to understand, and maybe all our audience also would love to, take some sort of insights from that in terms of, the most impactful moment during your founder's journey. And of course, you have 35 years experience. I know you come from a very strong entrepreneurship family DNA, very large entrepreneurship DNA. So, can you give us some insight about the most impactful moment, both high as well as low, if you would? Because I think it'll give really some good insights to our audience today. Back to you, Raj. Yeah,
So, I'll take, maybe 3 4 5 minutes to,
please, please.
tell my story. So, I'll
Sure.
go back to, 1986. I was
Uh-huh.
about 15 years old, in
Right.
1986. And, what happened is, in that particular, time period, my mom and dad would give me pocket money of about, 200 rupees. Okay. I was staying in Delhi. I had like a full North Indian, kind of, my, friends, and the
Wow.
and majority of them were coming from business families. Okay. And I would get my typical, 200 rupees per month, and I had to strictly spend. And, actually, I was somehow pushed to save money out of that 200 bucks. What happened is, and I fell in love, with a particular product called Nike Air. Okay, this was a shoe, and, I was just about 15 16 years old, and, fell in love with that shoe and wanted to buy the shoe. So I had saved money, and with whatever money I had saved, it was about 1,000 bucks is what, I had, and the shoe was for 1,250 bucks. Look at 1986 87. Okay. And, I fell short of about 250 bucks, and I went and asked everybody. My friends were able to muster about 50 100 rupees, and I still fell short of about, 150 bucks. The entire entrepreneurial spirit, or the entrepreneurial injection, or, as you call it in Hindi language, you call it ki, that kida to do entrepreneurship, came from that shortfall of 150 bucks. I
Wow.
said, I want to be independent. I don't want to be dependent on anybody. I don't want to ask, for money next time when I need it. Okay, this instilled a very, very strong feeling in me that if I have to do it, it is me who has to do it, and nobody is going to come and help me. And that's how I started. And I started selling T-shirts, and I was like, in 10th class. So I would print T-shirts and, go to college fests, ask my friends, and, that's how I started. And, with the pocket money which I had, I really did not need after the third month. I really did not need the pocket money, and I would tell my dad, no, don't give it to me, keep it. So he would still give me, but, I would actually not take that money from me. The second thing is, I understood that I had, my mom comes from a very decent industrial family, and my dad is, a full academician. Okay, so my dad, my elder brother, both were, in the services, and, brother, was dad was secretary to government of India, and brother just retired as, member railway board. So they were all into acads, and I was, I realized my early calling was entrepreneurship. So what happened is, one day, this was like, I had then did my college. After college, I started a company, and after the company, I wanted to, expand, and I saw my dad, one day not having his food, and I asked him why is, what happened. So my mom was telling, please talk to your dad. My dad told me that education cannot be replaced. Okay. So what you are doing entrepreneurial is fantastic, good, but only after you do your MBA. Once either you do MBA or sit for civil services. Civil services was something, which was because brother was a civil servant, so it was automatically assumed that I will also do. That particular thing, when my dad actually didn't to eat food because he wanted me to study, showed that how much of fatherly love, okay, can have impact on children typically at that age a little bit rash, but for me it was like a defining moment. And because of my MBA, from Delhi, it helped me a lot in terms of understanding the nuances of management, and also making so many good friends. And the number of friends I made, this continue to be my best friends, as of today as well. And that's how my life started. Then then I said, okay, I sold my business, the early business, to a company called Patterson Securities. Whatever money I got, took that money, and with that money I went to the US, got admission in New York University. And then from there, I wanted to get into something. I wanted to earn money. So the whole thought was that wanted to be independent, wanted to earn money. And I was picked up by PricewaterhouseCoopers. So when PwC picked up, I quickly said, Chuck MBA, joined there, did very, very well, in terms of, doing there through the ranks. I grew very fast. And then again, the entrepreneurial bug, called me that you have to come back to India and start something in India. So what happens is that, in my personal journey, the defining moment was that 150 rupees.
Yeah.
Second, my father saying, no, I will not have food unless and until you give up what you are doing and actually do an MBA. Then the third inflection point, I would say, was when, I wanted a bank loan. Bank wouldn't give you money. And they said you have to put collateral. And my father very gladly, gave his property as collateral and said, whatever happens to it happens, doesn't matter. And from there, what I have seen is a sea change. So for me, my father turned out to be a big hero. Very, very beautifully, he maneuvered me, in looking at things differently, and said that, see, while I'm giving you my property, I don't know what you will do with it, but I'm still, I am having faith in you. So that words like faith is something which goes a long way. All, and entrepreneurship is a very lonely journey, very, very lonely. And you need partners, you need friends, you need a group of people, who will be able to understand, what you are thinking and what you are going through. And for me, that was, this property giving to the bank was also a, huge inspiration, saying, he did, and it was a large property which he was giving by his standards. And he said, go ahead and, take it. So was a good inspiration. And then when I got into business, I never ever in my life would I had thought that, I will do something called Yantra. So Yantra was the largest merchandising company, with operations
Right.
in 51 countries across. So there have been, multiple journeys, but these three, four were like for me extremely, touching. And, the way they formed my thought. I always believe that, thoughts are, are like source of energy. And if thought you are able to focus on, then you're focusing on energy, and energy will, go ahead and do things. But one line I will end up, with this particular, is that don't fall in love with success, but
Right.
fall in love with the habits which brings you success. So that, so those habits is what I am, inculcating, constantly trying to learn. Even at this age, I would, maybe at 52, I still learn, love every day. My capacity to absorb things is fantastic. So I've, very kind of God to have given me that ability. And this is where, constant learning, turning, churning is what, I end up doing.
No, no, very, very beautifully, Raj. Thanks for sharing this rather personal insight, and my respect and compliments to your family, parents. See, I always believe that nature plus nurture make us what we are. I
Yep.
think
Yeah.
one one is fortunate that you get that type of support, especially from dad who was not an entrepreneur himself. So naturally, people who come from services background, actually, especially all of us in South India,
Yeah.
the automatic notion is that entrepreneurship is seen to be not for us, So I think
Yeah.
it's amazing, and your Delhi sort of exposure, your MBA school network, then you're going to New York, and then of course e-yantra. So very very fascinating insights, Raj. Thanks for sharing that. I know we are going to keep about last 10 minutes for questions, so I'll try to slip in one last
Sure.
related question before we break for audience questions, Raj. And I think you touched upon that, right? So for an entrepreneur, someone like you, right? So you just touched upon that you're constantly learning, you're constantly investing, meeting new people, you are receiving knowledge, you are parsing through all those inputs, you are filtering, and you are forming what I like to say, your world view, right?
Yeah.
Along with that comes the whole, I mean, for example, the whole generative AI revolution which is upon us. So in our book club we just read a book called The Coming Wave by
Yeah.
Mustafa Suleiman, who was the founder of Deep Mind. And when
Yeah.
one reads outside and beyond one's sort of day-to-day requirement, I
Yeah.
think those insights can be so valuable, and a lot of them come back to sort of form a part of your worldview which helps you with your business. So personally, I'm very fond of reading, but I really want to understand what is your playbook. How do you expand your worldview? What are those areas where you spend time upon ensuring that both your business and you personally stay relevant? Raj, please, over
Yeah.
to you. Yeah.
So, as I told you, one incident was for $150,
Yeah.
which made me go into entrepreneurship.
Right.
Similarly, there was a book by, Jeffrey Archer. Okay,
Oh,
the Jeffrey Archer book was called Cain and Abel.
of
Okay,
course.
William Cain and, Abel.
Yeah.
And, Abel was my hero. Okay, and
Okay.
always has remained my hero. And today it is about maybe 40 years since I read that book. And every time I read it, I feel so, so happy and so good about it. Just, for the fighting spirit he had. Okay,
Right.
just for the ability to fight with anything and everything, what he had. And, it showed that sometimes resilience is much more important than speed. And in my case, if you really look at it, speed may have been slow, but the resilience has proved to be much more smarter than speed.
Wow.
So if you look at, how do I spend my time, I love listening to podcasts. About roughly 4 hours a week is how I would go on podcasts. And some of the most famous guys, I look at a lot of YouTube videos, to be able to understand and get inspiration. The third thing, which is my favorite thing, is that I typically, when I meditate, post my meditation, I would play a full game with myself. Okay, this is a complete mental game, and where I would go ahead and say, okay, what if this scenario was to arise, what will you do? Okay, like in case of IPO, people had written off saying you can't do an IPO in this market. Market is dead. Okay, long live the market. But I was able to very beautifully play in and around with that, and was able to go ahead and plan those moves well in advance. So people call it like you playing chess, but you play chess with yourself, and you are the opponent and you are the player. So that has
Wow.
helped me tremendously, means tremendously. Foresight, reading things before they actually happen, go a long way in building your career. And you really, really, everybody has to, should be proud of what they have built to whatever extent. And I think I am very proud of having what I have built, and especially thankful to my team and my family for allowing me to build what I wanted to build.
Wonderful, wonderful, Raj. Thank you so much. I think that whole scenario planning and the ability to look beyond. So I just want to tell the audience, I hope you are aware that you will have to post questions in your chat box, and we have a moderator. So okay, I can see the first question coming up. So any of you others also feel free to post questions, and I'll selectively take some of the questions based on the time we have. So Raj, we have a first question from it's possibly from Rishita, or she's actually posted it. The question, Raj, is when scaling a startup, how do you determine the right time to expand into new markets or introduce new products or services? Superb question. Yeah, yeah,
Beautiful, beautiful. There is no one single right answer, but keep in mind, these are all indicators. Demand is more than your supply. It shows a question. It gives you a tick mark that if the demand is more than the supply, which you are able to do, you got to expand. That is one. The second is that, if there is, when you talk to your customers, so if you don't talk to your customers, then you would not know all of this. What
right,
your team will also give you is all filtered answers. So you need to talk to your customers. So once you see that the demand is increasing beautifully, you do that. Second thing is, a lot of times, you could borrow some of the models, from US or Europe or or European or other countries, and you see that, how have they behaved. Okay, like for
right,
example, somebody who is doing air conditioning, how can he expand into something more than air conditioning? Okay, somebody into, let's say for example, doing medical devices, how can they expand into more than medical devices? Okay, all of these things are, indicators which will give you, that you have to expand. And talking to your customers will is the best barometer for you to, to tell you whether it is the time to expand or not.
wonderful, Raj. I think that's a great question, and you sort of shared exactly the right insight. Because one of the things I also see with a lot of startups, especially product startups, Raj, is that sometimes the founder invests in building a product, but sometimes they miss out on investing in the go to market.
Correct.
And instead of actually investing in the go to market, a product person naturally lean towards building another product, right? So
So
there
true,
is
so
always,
true.
I
Yes,
think the creators
yes,
love to do what they are comfortable with, but
yes,
like it or not, I think for the founding team, the need to build complementary core skills, go to market, operations and finance, and technology product is so critical, right?
absolutely.
I have a second question again, which has covered it very well. I was to touch upon cash flow, but thank you. So the second question, Raj, is could you share some strategies for managing cash flows effectively, especially during the scaling process? Because expenses start increasing, and very often they are increasing much ahead of your actual revenues. So how do you juggle the cash flows during that takeoff period, Raj? Over to you.
So, I tell you, I have been through that, hundreds of times, means hundreds of times. so see, there is no one particular way of saying that, how your cash flows have to be better than your revenues. But one thing you keep in mind, or maybe two three things which you can keep in mind is, try to a forecast. Okay, that this is my cash flow, that this is the, when you are possibly falling short of
Yeah,
it, you know
right.
even before you reach that stage, please make sure that you have 2 3 4 5 lines, from where you can borrow. Okay, which is like, could be a bank, could be a financial institution, could be set of friends. And ensure that every time you borrow, you pay back on time. So borrow from left and, repay from right. Okay, do like whichever way you do, but ensure that your credit history across, whether it is a financial institution or a personal institution, is built really really well. I have found it, fantastically well for me. I once borrowed, few lakhs just to test out this hypothesis and paid interest on it. So I took that money, put that in the fixed deposit. There was a 2% loss for me. The fixed deposit was at a lower rate, and the interest I was paying was a slightly higher rate. But what it did was build credibility with the bank. Next time when I went to them, to borrow, they happily, means so happily, they gave me, and they sanctioned about 4 times that limit, because they could
Wow.
see history. Okay, so this is this is not a very popular advice which anybody would give,
Sure.
but especially but this is an actual advice which you would get from an entrepreneur.
No, this is so valuable, Raj. Thanks for sharing that actual lived experience. That's really the beauty of this interaction. And you touched upon forecasting, planning. Again, personally, I also come from a business and family background, and I often see founders sort of outsourcing those functions, right? So many times I tend to actually ask this question of my founders whom I'm mentoring, that how much cash do you have in the bank, and how many debtors do you have? How much is your stock level? And the founder says, oh, let me check with the finance person, or let me check with the ERP. So here I am saying that, if you're a founder, you need to have this data, your working capital, your cash position should be at the tips of your fingers. You cannot
Absolutely.
outsource that part. Amazing, amazing.
Absolutely, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Those are every day morning before you brush your teeth. You should remember those figures and plan accordingly.
So even if you're going to run into rough weather, you should know 3 months ahead, 6 months ahead, right? And it's very doable. You don't need rocket science or generative AI to give you that forecast. You just need to be on the top of your business. We have our next question, Raj. How do you maintain agility and adaptability within your organization as you scale, especially in the face of unexpected challenges or market shifts? Very nice question again. Agility and adaptability, Raj. Yeah.
So, if you really look at the agility and the and your ability to actually go ahead and do it, uh, you constantly mint. So you constantly, look at the overall, scenario. Constantly look at that. When do you have to take decisions? Which could be path defining. Some of the
Right.
problems what I have seen, some of the issues what I have seen is that some decisions are there, which are extremely important, but they are important, but they may not have that defining impact. Okay,
Mhm,
versus if you
mhm.
look at it, there would be some decisions which are not important at that point of time, but could be very impactful. So between those two, how do you make that difference? And where you use agility, where do you use ability? Or both ability you have to use everywhere, but those are very, very critical things.
Right, right. No, absolutely, Raj. I know we have last 5 minutes. I think I can take probably
Sure.
one more question. So, how does Zaggle approach collaborations with other companies and fintech startups? Again, very interesting question. Personally, also, I'm a big fan of mature company and startup collaboration because that's really the way of the future, I think. So, yeah, yeah,
So Zaggle's ecosystem is partnerships. Okay,
right,
so on one side, if you really look at it, what do we do? We bridge the gap between corporates, their needs, and banks and their offerings. That's precisely the business we do. If you have to very simple, very easily simplify it. Okay, and for us, it is our partnership ecosystem is what we are really proud of, and we would always be open to anybody approaching us for collaboration. And if the collaboration is accretive, okay, even if, let's say, for example, it's not accretive to us, but could be meaningful for others, we would love to go ahead and
fantastic.
do that partnership.
Excellent, Raj. Thank you for that encouragement to all the startups. I'll take this as the last question. I think it's from a friend of mine, Divya. The question, Raj, is a very beautiful question. How can startups attract top talent and retain them beyond salary, right? So, beyond just the financial incentive. and what are some actionable steps which you have taken to build a great culture at Zaggle, and how can startups, actually build such culture which can attract and retain some of the best talent, Raj? Yeah.
So, I would ask Divya that question, you know, if you remember any single director, a filmmaker, okay, whose first movie was a hit, and how he was able to attract the top talent to come and, act in his first film. Okay, so that's the corollary which you will have to think. For me, it is all about bringing them in the vision, the ability of you, to tell a story which will make them the characters in it is what you have to go ahead and tell. One thing I have realized, which I keep telling, to a lot of my staff as well, is that if it doesn't bring you, peace, profit and purpose, don't give it your time, attention and energy. Okay, that is how, I have told them. So the question is, reverse of it is also equally true, that if you are able to motivate them and, in your talk to them or in your interaction with them, they can see a purpose. Okay, they can see the vision. They can, they can actually look at your energy, how it is getting transmitted to them. It is much easier to get a buy-in. Okay, see, all of them, whoever is there, work on a simple law of attraction. Okay, and the simple law of attraction, a lot of us believe that attraction is money, but no, attraction is the vision. Attraction is to tell them that today you may be ordinary, tomorrow you are extraordinary. If you are extraordinary, you would be the best in the world. That ability to be able to give them that inference is so important. And I hired my MD, who is my MD for about CEO and MD for about
Avinash.
12
Yeah.
years, Avinash, came
Yeah.
from Citibank, and he was joining a startup, which had like just 3 employees. And the way, and from there, we got Saurabh Puri, 14 years in Kotak Mahindra Bank, heading Kotak, Kotak's credit card, department is what he was doing, with hundreds and thousands of people reporting into him. So how do you attract them? Attract them is about storytelling, and people love storytelling. And story is what would make them. Your story is your vision, story is your execution, and what it would do is attract them like magnet to you.
No, I love your comparison with the successful film director who brought top stars and this entire storytelling. Amazing, Raj. I'll take the last 1 minute, Raj, to personally first thank you and to thank IDFC First Bank, Money Control, CNBC 18, as well as TI Hyderabad, which I'm also a part of, for bringing this wonderful program. Again, Raj, I think thank you for sharing such amazing insights into your personal journey. Thank you for your candid sort of opening up of some of the events in your personal life, and wish you and the Zaggle team all the success. I also want to call out IDFC First Bank for the great work they are doing in terms of grants for startups, a lot of working capital access for startups. I understand they offer many collateral free loans to startups. So I think they are a great place to go to for aspiring startups. And of course, hats off to Money Control, CNBC. All of us have grown up enjoying their insights all the way to listed markets. But anything in financial knowledge, I think CNBC 18 Money Control has always been great at that. So thank you. I hand back to the moderators. Uh, yeah,
Thank you so much,
thank you.
Sanjay. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, all the audience, for patiently listening to me. Thank you, IDFC, Money Control, and CNBC TV 18.